The words hit me like a freight train. What can a girl who loves women ever achieve in this world? My mother spat them out at the family dinner table, her voice dripping with contempt as she glared at Violet sitting across from me. Our hands intertwined under the tablecloth in a desperate attempt to hide what had just been exposed. The clink of forks stopped instantly. My father stared into his plate like it held the answers to the universe, while my brother smirked from the end of the table, already reaching for his phone as if this was the best gossip he'd heard all year. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not from shame exactly, but from the raw fury that my carefully guarded secret had shattered in the middle of a Sunday roast in our quiet Seattle suburb. Violet's fingers tightened around mine, a silent anchor, but her eyes betrayed the same storm I felt inside. Fear mixed with that stubborn love we'd built over 2 years of stolen moments and whispered promises. I pushed my chair back, the scrape loud in the sudden silence. "Mom, you don't get to decide what I can achieve," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, though my heart hammered like it wanted to escape my chest. She stood too, her napkin crumpling in her fist. "Alexandra, this isn't some phase. You're throwing away everything, your career, your future, our family name, for what? A girl." The way she said girl made it sound like a curse, like Violet was less than the silverware we used. I glanced at Violet, her blonde hair catching the overhead light, her face pale but determined, and in that split second I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. We'd talked about this night for weeks, rehearsing how to tell them gently, but gentle had just exploded in our faces. We left without dessert, the front door slamming behind us like a punctuation mark on 28 years of pretending. Outside in the cool Pacific Northwest air, Violet pulled me into a hug right there on the porch steps, her breath warm against my neck. "We don't need their approval, Alex," she murmured, but I could hear the crack in her voice, the same doubt that clawed at me too. What if Mom was right? What if loving her meant I'd never climb the corporate ladder at the tech firm where I'd just made junior analyst, or that my dreams of speaking on big stages about women's leadership would stay locked in my journal? The drive back to our tiny apartment downtown was quiet except for the rain pattering on the windshield. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened, replaying every family holiday, every Christmas where I'd smiled through questions about boyfriends I never had. Violet reached over and rested her hand on my knee, and for the first time that night I let myself cry, not loud sobs, but silent tears that blurred the taillights ahead. By the time we pulled into the parking garage, the weight of it all settled like concrete in my stomach. I had choices to make, real ones with prices attached. Stay silent and lose myself, or fight and risk losing the only family I'd ever known. Violet unlocked our door, flicked on the lights, and poured us both glasses of cheap red wine from the fridge. We sat on the couch, knees touching, and she listened while I poured out every fear. The promotion I'd been eyeing that now felt impossible with rumors sure to spread. The mortgage we'd just signed together that suddenly seemed reckless. "I don't regret us," I told her, meaning it even as the words tasted like a gamble. She nodded, her green eyes steady. "Then we built something better than what they offered." That night we didn't sleep much. Instead we talked until dawn about next steps. Me updating my resume with bolder goals, her sketching designs for the graphic design freelance gigs that kept us afloat. But underneath it all, the question gnawed. Could two women really stand against the tide and still come out whole? The next morning at work, the whispers started sooner than I expected. My boss called me into his office before lunch, his face a mask of forced concern. "Alexandra, there are some concerns about your personal life affecting team dynamics." I sat there, back straight, and lied through my teeth that it was private and wouldn't impact performance. But inside, the betrayal already burned. Someone from family dinner must have texted someone who knew someone at the office. Violet texted me during the meeting. "Survived my own parents' call. They want me to come home and think straight. We got this." Her words were a lifeline, but as I walked back to my desk, dodging pitying glances, I wondered how many more hits we could take before one of us cracked. That evening we cooked pasta in our cramped kitchen, laughing over spilled sauce to push the darkness away, yet every laugh carried the edge of what we'd just lost. Family wasn't just blood. It was the safety net I'd taken for granted, and now it had been yanked out from under me. I held Violet close that night, her head on my chest, and made a silent vow. Whatever the cost, I would prove them wrong. Not for revenge, but because loving her had unlocked parts of me I never knew existed. Still, as sleep finally claimed me, the echo of my mother's voice lingered, planting seeds of doubt that would grow into full-blown storms in the months ahead. The weeks after that dinner blurred into a grind of small victories and sharper wounds. Violet and I threw ourselves into our routines like lifelines. Me burying myself in data reports at the firm, her hustling for freelance logo designs from our kitchen table. But the isolation crept in like fog off the sound. My brother stopped replying to texts, and when I called home to check on Dad's health, Mom answered with a curt "he's fine. Don't call again until you've fixed this." Fixed it. As if Violet was a glitch in my code. The word stung worse each time, forcing me to confront the moral tightrope I was walking. Loyalty to the family that raised me versus the truth of who I was. I lay awake nights beside Violet, listening to her even breathing, and questioned if my choice to stay with her was selfish, robbing my parents of the daughter they expected, the grandkids they'd hinted at in not-so-subtle ways. Yet every morning her smile over coffee reminded me why I couldn't walk away. She saw me, really saw me, in a way no one else ever had. Then came the first real betrayal, the one that cracked our fragile world wider open. My best friend from college, Sarah, had always been the safe one. The straight ally who cheered us on in private. Or so I thought. One Tuesday she showed up at our apartment unannounced, eyes red from crying, and dropped the bomb. "Your mom called me. I told her everything, Alex." She sounded so broken, and I thought if I explained it gently. Violet froze in the doorway, coffee mug halfway to her lips, while I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Sarah had been the one I'd confided in during our first year together, swearing her to secrecy. Now that secrecy was weaponized and the fallout hit like a slap. "You had no right," I whispered, voice shaking not with anger but with the raw pain of trust shattered. Sarah left in tears, apologizing profusely. But the damage was done. Mom's next voicemail was pure venom, threatening to cut me from the will if I didn't end this phase. Violet held me as I broke down on the couch, her arms steady even as her own eyes glistened. "She chose her fear over your happiness," Violet said softly. "We choose each other." But choosing each other meant staring down the barrel of real consequences. My name scrubbed from family group chats, invitations to holidays revoked with cold finality. Work grew toxic too. Colleagues who'd once grabbed lunch with me now avoided eye contact. And when a big project lead spot opened, it went to a guy with half my experience. "Office politics," my boss shrugged when I asked, but we both knew the rumors had poisoned the well. I came home that night furious, slamming the door harder than intended, and Violet met me with takeout and a listening ear. We talked for hours about the double standard, how straight couples flaunted engagement rings without backlash, while we tiptoed around holding hands in public. The moral dilemma gnawed deeper. Was it fair to drag Violet through this fire when she could have a quieter life with someone society's rules accepted? She read my mind somehow, cupping my face in her hands. "Don't you dare think about pushing me away to protect me. This is our fight." Her words anchored me, but they didn't erase the guilt. That weekend we drove to a quiet beach outside the city, walking the shoreline hand in hand under gray skies, letting the waves drown out the noise. There, away from eyes, I admitted the fear aloud. What if they're right? What if loving you limits what I can build? Violet stopped, turned me to face her, and kissed me gently. Not passionate fireworks, but a promise sealed in salt air. "Then we'll build something they never imagined." The pressure compounded when Violet's own family chimed in via a stiff email from her dad in Portland. Conservative to the core, they offered help, in the form of counseling referrals and a not-so-subtle suggestion she move back home alone. She read it to me over breakfast, voice steady but hands trembling. And in that moment I saw the parallel cost she paid. No dramatic dinner blow-up, just quiet erasure. We decided then to stop hiding in small ways. Posting a simple photo of us at a coffee shop on social media, captionless but defiant. Likes trickled in from strangers, but the family silence deepened into a void. Internally, I wrestled with the ethics. Had I chosen love at the expense of their peace? Or was their prejudice the real thief? Violet started sketching again with new fire, turning our pain into bold designs for an indie campaign she pitched online. I updated my LinkedIn with subtle hints of advocacy work, testing waters I once feared. Each small step forward carried the weight of what we'd sacrificed. Yet together we felt unstoppable, even as the next wave of opposition loomed on the horizon. Months piled on like layers of armor we didn't ask for, each one hardening us in ways that both strengthened and scared me. The social media posts we dared to share went mildly viral in niche LGBTQ+ circles, drawing messages from women across the country who saw themselves in our quiet defiance. Violet's freelance work picked up. She landed a contract designing branding for a women's nonprofit in Tacoma, and I started volunteering nights at a local community center, facilitating workshops on leadership for young professionals. On paper it looked like progress, but every win tasted bittersweet because home remained a locked door. Mom's last text had been 3 words: "You've chosen wrong." Those words echoed during my commutes, forcing me to examine the trade-off. Success measured by applause from strangers versus the approval that once defined my worth. Violet noticed my late-night pacing and pulled me into bed one rainy evening, her voice soft against my shoulder. "You're not wrong for wanting both, Alex, but you can't have their version anymore." She was right, yet the moral tangle persisted. Was I honoring my truth or simply rebelling at their expense? The real test came when an old family friend, Uncle Ray, reached out unexpectedly. He'd always been the buffer, the one who slipped me cash for college books without questions. Now he invited me to lunch alone, no Violet, at a diner near his office. I went, heart in my throat, hoping for reconciliation. Instead he slid an envelope across the table. Plane tickets to a family retreat in Arizona, just me and them. "Leave the girl behind for a week," he said gently. "Give them time to see the real you." The implication stung. Violet was the distortion, not their bias. I stared at the tickets, weighing the cost of saying yes, a temporary truce, maybe even a path back to partial acceptance, against the betrayal it would mean to the woman waiting at home. "I can't," I told him, pushing the envelope back. "She's not something I leave behind." His disappointed sigh followed me out the door. Another fracture in the web of relationships I'd once relied on. Driving home, I gripped the wheel and let the tears fall freely. Choosing Violet had just cost me the last bridge to my past. That night we fought. Not the screaming kind, but the quiet, soul-bearing kind where truth spilled like water from a cracked dam. Violet admitted her own doubts. Nights she wondered if her presence was holding me back from the corner office I'd always chased. I countered with my terror that without her I'd become the hollow version of myself my family preferred. We ended up on the floor laughing through tears, the argument dissolving into reaffirmation. "We're in this mess together," she said, tracing patterns on my arm. The next morning I channeled the chaos into action, drafting an article for an online women's forum about navigating professional life as an out lesbian. It published under a pseudonym at first, but the responses poured in, women sharing stories of similar family rifts, moral crossroads where love clashed with duty. Violet read it over my shoulder, pride shining in her eyes, and suggested we turn it into something bigger. A joint talk at a small local conference. I hesitated. Public speaking meant visibility, which meant more backlash. But her hand on mine tipped the scale. We submitted the proposal that afternoon, stepping deliberately onto a path where retreat was no longer an option. Work tension escalated when my annual review arrived. The feedback was glowing on metrics but laced with concerns about cultural fit. Translation. My personal life made some uncomfortable. I walked out of that meeting with a flat raise and a knot in my gut, straight to Violet's studio where she was painting protest signs for a local pride event we'd agreed to join. We spent the evening silkscreening slogans, our hands stained with ink, talking through the ethical line I was towing, staying at a company that tolerated me only in shadows versus quitting to chase the speaking dreams that now felt possible. "The price of staying small isn't worth it," she said, wiping paint from my cheek. Her words lit a spark. By week's end I'd updated my resume with the article link and conference acceptance, sending it to nonprofit boards and TEDx-style organizers on a whim. Doubt still whispered at night, questioning if ambition plus love equaled selfishness, but Violet's steady presence silenced it enough to keep moving. The conference came and went in a blur of nerves and applause. Our talk on resilience drew a standing ovation from 50 people, small but seismic. Driving home afterward, windows down and music loud, I felt the first real shift. We weren't just surviving the prejudice, we were rewriting its rules. The invitation email landed in my inbox on a Tuesday that felt ordinary until it wasn't. TEDx Seattle would like to feature you and your partner in a joint talk on defying expectations, love, leadership, and legacy. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Violet with shaking hands. Her reply was instant. This is it, Alex. Our stage. But joy crashed hard against the wall of reality when I called home one last time to share the news, hoping for even a crumb of pride. Mom answered, listened in silence, then delivered the ultimatum. If you go public with her, you're dead to us. No inheritance, no contact, nothing. The line went dead before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone like it had grown teeth. Violet found me on the balcony later, rain soaking us both, and we stood there wrapped in each other while I processed the finality. Choosing the stage meant severing the last thread. Refusing meant burying the voice we'd fought to amplify. The moral weight pressed down. Was I destroying my family for 15 minutes of spotlight, or honoring the woman who'd stood by me through every fracture? We spent the following weeks in a pressure cooker of preparation and second-guessing. Violet designed our slides at night, her creativity a bomb, while I rehearsed lines in front of the mirror, each word a declaration that loving her hadn't diminished me, it had forged me. But betrayal struck again from an unexpected corner. My sister, who'd stayed neutral until now, leaked a private family photo to a conservative blog, captioning it with a plea for prayers for our lost daughter. The story spread in niche circles, painting us as the villains tearing a family apart. Comments flooded in, some vicious enough to make Violet delete her social apps for a day. I wanted to rage, to call my sister and demand why, but instead I sat with the pain and chose response over reaction. We drafted a short statement together, posting it calmly. Love isn't a loss. It's the foundation we build on. The backlash mixed with support, but the family silence became absolute. Internally I wrestled hardest here. Had my pursuit of visibility crossed into recklessness? Violet sensed the spiral and pulled me to a weekend hike in the Cascades, where among the pines she reminded me, every step costs something. The question is what we gain. Her faith in us steadied my hand as I hit send on the final TEDx confirmation. The moral dilemmas layered thicker during rehearsals. I practiced the speech alone one evening, confessing to the empty room the guilt of prioritizing our story over my parents' peace. Violet walked in midway, listened without judgment, then shared her own. The nights she wondered if she should have let me go for my sake. We cried together, then laughed at the absurdity. Two women who'd chosen each other repeatedly now questioning if choice itself was the flaw. The conference organizers sent media prep notes, warning of potential protests, which only fueled our resolve. I quit the corporate job that week, walking out with a severance check and the terrifying freedom of full-time advocacy. Violet celebrated by framing our first joint paycheck from her nonprofit gigs, hanging it above our bed like a trophy. Each decision carried its price tag. Lost relatives, strained friendships, sleepless nights. But the alternative felt like slow suffocation. As the date neared, we drove to the venue for a walkthrough, standing on the empty stage under work lights. Violet squeezed my hand. This is where they see us whole. In that quiet moment, the internal storm quieted enough to let hope peek through, even as the final cost loomed just beyond the curtain. The final countdown to TEDx felt like walking a tightrope over a canyon I'd helped carve. We spent late nights refining every pause in the speech, Violet practicing her parts on camera while I timed transitions, our voices blending in the small apartment until they sounded like one heartbeat. But the external noise refused to fade. Anonymous emails arrived calling us family destroyers, and a distant cousin posted old childhood photos with captions questioning my choices. Each one reopened the wound, forcing me to confront the deepest moral rift yet. Had I traded my parents' unconditional love for conditional applause? Violet found me rereading one particularly cruel message at 2 a.m., closed my laptop gently, and led me to the roof where city lights stretched below. We didn't start this war, she said, but we're ending it our way. Her words didn't erase the guilt, but they reframed it. Our stand wasn't destruction, it was reconstruction on honest ground. We stayed up until dawn mapping the talk's emotional arc, turning every scar into a bridge for others. Flashbacks hit hardest during those final days, pulling me back to our first meeting 3 years earlier at a Seattle networking event. I'd been the buttoned-up analyst in a gray suit. She'd been the freelance artist with paint flecks on her jeans, laughing too loud at bad coffee. Our eyes locked across the room during a panel on creativity and tech, and something clicked, quiet recognition that neither of us fit the mold. Months of cautious dates followed, stolen kisses in parking garages, until the night she asked me to stay over, and I realized love didn't ask permission. Those memories fueled the speech now, reminding me why the fight mattered. Violet caught me staring at an old photo one evening and smiled knowingly. We were scared then too. Look how far we've come. Her reminder grounded me as nerves peaked. I practiced delivery in front of her, voice cracking on the line about family rejection, and she simply hugged me until the trembles stopped. The day before the event brought one last internal crisis. A final voicemail from Dad. His voice hoarse, uncharacteristic, pleaded. "Don't do this, Alexandra. Come home. We can fix it." I played it for Violet, tears streaming, and for one agonizing hour I considered canceling. The choice felt impossible. Step onto that stage and cement the rift forever, or step back and betray the woman who'd sacrificed her own family ties alongside me. We sat on the floor surrounded by note cards, debating pros and cons like accountants tallying souls. "If you back out for them," Violet said finally, eyes steady despite the fear, "you'll lose the part of you I fell in love with." Her honesty cut through the fog. I deleted the voicemail, deleted the doubt, and we spent the evening finalizing slides instead. Sleep came in fits, but when it did, I dreamed of standing tall. Not alone, but with her hand in mine. Morning brought clarity. The price was steep, but hesitation would cost more. We dressed simply, me in a tailored blazer, her in a flowing blouse that caught the light, and drove to the venue together, the city awakening around us like a witness to our resolve. The auditorium lights warmed the stage as the MC announced us, and suddenly there we were, Alexandra and Violet, hand in hand under the spotlights, facing hundreds of faces that blurred into a sea of expectation. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat, but Violet's calm squeeze grounded me. We began the talk exactly as rehearsed, me recounting the dinner that shattered everything, her weaving in the artistic vision we'd built from the ashes. Words flowed. Family ultimatums, workplace whispers, the moral tightropes we'd walked, but the room leaned in, silent and attentive. I spoke of the betrayals that tested us, the nights doubt nearly won, the deliberate choices to keep loving despite the cost. Violet described sketching our future when the world offered only erasure, her voice steady as she turned to me on stage. Loving her didn't limit me, it liberated us both. The applause started midway, building like thunder, and when we finished the final line, we didn't break the mold, we forged a new one together. The entire hall rose as one. People stood clapping, some wiping eyes, the ovation rolling over us in waves that drowned every skeptical voice from our past. I looked at Violet, tears blurring her smile, and knew in that instant we'd paid the price and found it worth every scar. Afterward, in the green room, we held each other amid the buzz of congratulations, the weight of the moment settling like a crown. Organizers praised the impact, strangers shared stories of their own awakenings, but my mind drifted back to the empty seats that represented my family, the ones who chose absence over acceptance. Violet read my thoughts, resting her forehead against mine. "We built this without them," she whispered, "and we're stronger for it." The drive home was quiet, filled with the kind of satisfied exhaustion that follows a battle won. We celebrated with takeout on the couch, replaying highlights on my phone, laughing at the parts where nerves had made my voice crack. Yet even in victory, the internal ledger balanced unevenly. Joy on one side, the permanent fracture on the other. I'd achieved what they'd claimed impossible, but at the cost of the childhood home that once defined safety. Weeks later, as the talk went viral and opportunities flooded in, podcasts, book deals, more stages, I still caught myself checking my phone for a message that never came. Violet and I moved into a brighter apartment with the new income, planting herbs on the balcony and talking about the future without hesitation. Our love had deepened through the fire, proving resilient in ways the doubters never imagined. But the question lingers in quiet moments, demanding honesty. In choosing the woman I love over the family that raised me, was I right to embrace a truth that set me free, or did the standing ovation come at a price too high for any heart to justify?